They were a dried up fig tree with no fruit for a hungry God to feast upon. Now I want to get political here for a few moments. Folks, I think we live in a day today. Now, not to demise, not to minimize great works again. Please don't misunderstand me. Great churches like ours that we do work. Good people that do great work. We give and we give and we give. And we're obedient to God. Great works around the world. Young people that traveling around the world doing the work of the gospel. Wonderful things. But folks, understand this. You cannot separate a Jew from being Jewish. You cannot separate a Jew from being an Israelite. And you cannot separate an American Christian from being an American. We are responsible for the whole of our country. God watched over specific individual Jewish people. But when the leadership of their nation and their nation as a whole rebelled against God, everybody was affected. He did not see them as just individual people, but they were a nation. And they failed to produce fruit for a hungry God. I believe today America is failing in producing her fruit.
Amen.
The world is failing to provide fruit to feed a hungry God. And folks, between you and me, God's only going to be hungry for so long.
That's right. Yeah.
And if we are not obedient to the things of the Scriptures, we live under a curse. I don't care how Christian you are. If we do not obey the laws of God, we live under a curse. If I say I have faith and I fail to tithe, I am living under a curse. Well, Pastor, you don't understand how I can. You know what? I have no idea. And I know I'm probably preaching to the choir. But you've got to understand, I'm not just preaching to you, but I'm preaching to those that are listening. And this word goes out there, folks. I used to be on radio. This word, it goes out there. These words that I speak to you, that preachers speak, that you speak to you by faith into your life, if you speak it out loud, it goes into the spirit world. It goes into the spirit world. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. If I say I have faith, but yet I fail to be obedient in the minimum things that God asks me to obey in, I have no faith. I have no fruit. I am a barren fig tree. Folks, there has to be a price that is paid. There has to be a price that is paid. The other day I was listening on the news, and this politician from Israel, Jerusalem, she was talking about the Muslims and the migration of Muslims into Israel. Now you need to listen to this. Folks, there are more Muslims that live in Israel than Jews. And she was asked if she was going to run for political office for the parliament. And she said, yeah, she's going to, because she said there's so many Muslims coming into our neighborhoods. And she said the neighborhoods that are experiencing the most influx of immigrant Muslims into those neighborhoods, the crime rate is soaring through the roof. And she says, if we don't do something about it soon, we won't have a country. Muslims rule the Holy Land. They rule in Jerusalem. The Golden Dome, they are in charge of. There's some 20 or 30 different religions that worship in Jerusalem at the Golden Dome, where the temple's supposed to be, and Muslims are in charge of it. Folks, let me tell you something. out of their own mouths. They need to worry less about Iran and less about Egypt and less about Libya and less about Iraq, because they are being taken from within. And if they think when the bombs begin to fly that Hezbollah is the only ones that they have to worry about now, when Iran shoots a missile into Israel at Jerusalem, all of those quiet Muslims in all of those neighborhoods are instantly going to arise. And Jerusalem, you think Ezekiel was bad? A worse day is coming.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not preaching doom and gloom. What I'm preaching is this. And on the morrow when they came from Bethany, he hungered. And seeing a fig tree afar off, he came if happily he might find anything thereon. And when he got there, there was no fruit. You see, that fig tree is an emblem of Israel. That fig tree is an emblem of the state of the world right now. The state of our country, the state of Argentina, Venezuela, Europe, the UK just seceded from the EU. If you've been watching the news, you know all about that. Folks, it is going to begin a cataclysmic domino effect.
Yes.
Listen to this now. The days of our voting, I remember in the late 60s, my parents pastoring in Newport, Oregon, and there was debate when it was voting for Nixon and others that Goldwater. And I remember my parents talking about whether they were going to vote Republican or Democrat, whether they were going to go with Goldwater or whether they, and it kind of vacillated. And I think my parents voted for John F. Kennedy in '62. Folks, the Democratic Party of John F. Kennedy of 1962 isn't anything, doesn't look like anything like the Democratic Party today. Folks, it is no longer in our world. It's not about Republican or Democrat or independent anymore. Christian people, it's time to get our heads out of the sand.
That's right.
We are facing no longer Republicans or Democrats or independents. It is a battle against good and evil, flat out.
Yeah.
It is a battle between light and darkness. It is a battle between the beginning and the end of things.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
It is no longer crossing over somehow, voting for maybe the best candidate. That's over. It's now good and evil. The other day, the former Secretary of Treasury for Bush came out and said, I cannot vote for Trump. I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton. What a quitter, what a traitor, what a hypocrite. They do not understand, they are completely and totally void. Can't vote for Trump because he's a racist and he hates women and his rhetoric and just the way he talks, so I just can't support that. Okay. Then put in Mrs. Clinton and the Supreme Court members that she is going to appoint. Already this past week, the Supreme Court decided 4 liberals, 4 conservatives, because we're -1. And it shut Barack Obama down from creating and writing his own laws concerning immigration in this country. Now you put her into office and put another liberal, and another liberal. I've said this before, and preachers are finally starting to say this. The United States of America will never be recognizable again.
That's right.
The United States of America that you and I and we all grew up in will never exist again.
That's right.
And Christian people, we better get our heads out of the sand and understand that this is against good and evil. This is against light and darkness now. The political parties are out of the picture.
That's right.
And just because maybe you don't like the way I talk, maybe you don't like what I have to say, but let me tell you something, truth is coming through.
That's right.
The truth is a reality. The truth is spoken. And the truth will set you free.
Yes, yes, yes.
You can kiss your guns goodbye. Oh, and by the way, all you preachers who think that if the wrong person gets into the White House over the course of the next 8 to 10 to 15 years, if you think that we're going to maintain all of our freedoms of speech and nobody else can acquire this pulpit except for me, then preachers, you better be thinking again, because it's coming down the pipe.
That's right.
She has already made witness that the activities of Christian people are the same as terrorists.
That's right. Yeah. She said.
Already in southern Texas, in Houston, preachers are trying to be required to produce their notes because they want to see how much they're talking about religion and how much they're talking about politics. He hungered, and he saw a fig tree afar off. And the Creator came to his creation to find something to eat, and it was barren. So he cursed it. Folks, I have to ask myself the question. If God hungers and he comes knocking on my heart's door, will he find fruit to eat? Is my life fruitful? Are we as a church, are we fruitful? Are we interceding? We read it just last week. God was amazed that he looked down and could find no intercessor. He was amazed that there was no one to intercede on behalf of the people. So his own righteousness came unto himself, because there was no righteousness. There was no fruit on the fig tree when he went to look for it, when he hungered. So God's own righteousness fed himself. You see, folks, in conclusion, I'm supposed to have faith in God for what I can become, not for what I can get out of God.
Amen.
I'm supposed to have faith in God for what I can become, not what I can get out of him, but what I can become. What am I becoming in the things of God? Am I meeting the need of a hungry God? Folks, we already know our educational system. It's just about as low as it can get, folks.
That's right.
There's no more God there.
Yeah.
And I'm absolutely amazed of the lack of intelligence with politicians, sport, TV personalities, preachers, and so forth. I'm just amazed at the lack of intelligence of how our country is corrupting right in front of our eyes, yet we fail to see it. And I've told you that already, starting this year in the state of Washington, we're going to teach transgender sexuality expression to our kindergartners. It is just, I'm lost for words to describe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a highly educated man with years and years and years of experience of speaking, writing, and teaching. And I fail. I'm struggling to find the words to describe how far our country has corrupted itself. While preachers and churches and Christians just let it go by
Amen.
without speaking and addressing to it and calling that we are not to take physical arms, but our spiritual warfare is supernatural in the supernatural things of God.
Amen.
And he wondered why there was no intercessor. We're in a lot of trouble.
That's right. That's right.
We're in a lot of trouble. At the same time, I have great expectations for the blessings of God.
Yes. Yes. Amen. Exciting.
At the same time, I have great expectations. Hallelujah. At the same time, man, I'm telling you, I'm expecting God. I'm obeying God. And it may look dark right now in my own personal life or my own soul or your own personal life or your own soul or whatever it might be. But I'm telling you, with obedience, our barns are going to be full.
That's right. Amen.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
Hallelujah. But that does not give us permission to be obtuse of the fact that when the Creator approaches His creation, is there fruit or is there no fruit? If God was to walk down the aisles of this congregation right now, would He find fruit on our fig tree? I think He would. But I need to make sure that He will.
Yes. Yes.
Can you say amen?